What is that? Hey everybody, it is Queen Horror, aka Allie Top, and today I'm going to be doing an unprepared video, but I was like, hey, I'm looking good today, so why not? So today's video is going to be called, I don't know what it's going to be called, but I'm going to be talking about, a little bit about 3 books that I've read that are horror related and that I really just enjoy. So let's get right into it, shall we? The first one is Interview with the Vampire by Anne Rice, and I read this one probably like, excuse the noise, we just did a show, and so he's kind of, Mr. Kristoff is kind of putting it out there, but this book I read I think it was last year, and that was after I had already seen the movie with Brad Pitt and Tom Cruise, so it was pretty cool. I really liked the book, and I liked it genuinely because of the characters. It wasn't as much the situation, the situation was great, but the character dialogue between Louis and Lestat, I'm supposed to say Lestat, in the movie it's Lestat, but just for respect, I'm gonna say how it's supposed to be said, it's Lestat. Just their dialogue and the friction and tension between them, it's you kind of ship them as a couple a little bit, but at the same time you're like, Lestat is kind of a little bit emotionally abusive towards Louis because he's like, oh, don't go, forcing him to do stuff he doesn't want to, sleep in the coffin with him, and there's a lot of gory scenes in this book, so I think if you're not into watching not reading about people getting torn limb from limb, you probably shouldn't read this book, but it's an art. Like I talked about briefly in my last video, I think that horror is an art, and I appreciate that art. So basically, a little bit what this book is about is a human named Louis. He's kind of living a dull life. He gets turned into a vampire by Lestat, and everything gets turned all upside down in his life, and he learns how to cope with being a vampire and having to battle with those moral just thoughts, I guess, about not killing when everybody else around him is telling him to kill. But spoiler alert, at the end of the book he does start killing people, and it becomes kind of easy for him, and he's hiding in the shadows and stuff. But anyway, this is a brilliant tale of becoming a vampire and living with it, and it's from Louis' perspective, so that's that. So it's how Louis sees it. But in this next book, the sequel, The Vampire Lestat, you see it from Lestat's perspective, and all of a sudden, the beginning of the book talks about him becoming a vampire and everything that this said about Lestat. You gotta read this book, okay? Because it just got a whole other level of crazy, because he's talking about it from his perspective, and then this book actually talks a little bit about his past, but then it moves on from this, and it talks about who he really is, and you get to learn who he really is. He's not this bad, abusive person that you read about in this. He does kind of have. Okay, sorry about that. I ran out of storage on my phone and it told me to stop, so it just made me stop. Anyway, I was talking about this book, The Vampire Lestat by Anne Rice, which is a continuation of this bad boy right here. And it kind of starts out with him as a human, then it goes on to his dealings as transforming into a vampire, and you kind of see that he's kind of like the Dexter of vampires a little bit, because he's only killing bad people, and you kind of see it within this one, but from Louis' perspective, Lestat is kind of a bad dude, but in this one he's kind of like the anti-hero, and I really fell in love with his character in this book. And I mean, when people ask me, do you like Dracula or do you like Lestat, and I'm like, I don't know, because Dracula, he made, he paved the way, but Lestat, man, he's the bomb. So yeah, I saw a lot of similarities between Lestat's character that Anne Rice created and my own self, and trying to find out who I am and longing for things that almost seem unattainable, and then just like coping with those things once you do have them and not wanting to lose them, and just being a dreamer and just wanting so much out of the world that you could like almost die. And he's such an emotional character, and that's just, I love everything about it. So I definitely recommend reading this because I feel like you get a lot more of the truth than you do from this, but sometimes truth is a matter of perspective. So Lestat is not a perfect character, so Louis' interpretation of Lestat was not accurate, but he's not as bad as Louis painted out him to be. This last book I'm going to talk about, I read the beginning of this year, and it's called Dracula. And dude, J.D. Barker, like, he hit the nail on the coffin, so to speak, because I started reading this. I got this actually for my birthday. Yeah, I got this for my birthday, and it's something that I've seen, and since I'm trying to get all the vampire books, I was like, I need to buy this one. So I got this one, and I read it almost immediately, and from like page 1, it was just cool because it talks about this as if Bram Stoker was telling the truth the whole time he wrote Dracula. And it talks about how the events of Dracula really did happen, because the main character in the story is young Bram Stoker himself. And it is a lot about his childhood, and then it kind of paints the picture into his adulthood as well. And I just love it because it makes everything seem real. You will feel like you're in this book. You will feel like you are the characters. You will suddenly feel like you have an illness that can't be cured, just like Bram Stoker before the vampire bit him. Spoil alert. If you didn't want the spoilers, I'm sorry. I just gave them to you. Merry Christmas. But yeah, this book is great. It made me question things. It made me wonder if vampires were real for a second, because at the end, oh my goodness, at the end there are notes and stuff, because a descendant of Bram Stoker, as you can see right here, had a hand in writing this book too, and they kind of talked at the end about how Bram really kind of believed this stuff. So it's kind of interesting. I highly recommend this book. Once I read this one first, and then once I read this one, I was like, oh, which one do I like more? I don't know. I like them all for different reasons. You get different vibes with each one. And so, yeah, I highly recommend all 3 of those horror books. And yeah, so maybe I'll do more book reviews. If you want me to do more book reviews, just let me know in the comments below. Like it, favorite, I don't think that's a thing. Share it, subscribe, all that good stuff. And until I bring you another video, life is good, and I'm gone.